Part of personal development has to be refined in the marketplace. So let's talk about this. Now the personal development that you must watch out for, especially in the marketplace. Here's what's key if you want to do well in the marketplace. Study your market. Part of this is regional. If you're in the South, you study the South. What are some characteristics of the Southerners? How about the North? How about the West? How about California versus Brooklyn? Right? If Brooklyn was your market, you would study that market. If California is your market, you study this market. Be a student of your market. Now, here's what's very important. Your personal behavior in the marketplace. Not just what you know and what you've learned, ready now to serve in product or service, but a big share of your future success, both economically and every other way, is going to lie in your own behavior. This is part of personal development. How do you affect other people? Is that going to play a role in the kind of income you have and the kind of future you have? And the answer is yes, of course, yes. Here's one of the most important things to think of in the marketplace: your language. Your language. Now, some people who are inclined to use bad language, I'm telling you, in the marketplace is not the place. To use bad language in the marketplace, it's too costly. If you were to add up what it really cost, I'm telling you, you'd be a lot more careful. You've got to shift gears from the bar language to the marketplace language. Some things you can get by with telling a dirty story and, using a little profanity in the bar, but now when it comes to the marketplace, you've got to be careful. Here's why. You can isolate huge chunks of your audience that could give you sales, that could give you all kinds of benefits, that could really help your business to advance, but they're offended by the language. Now, here's what doesn't offend anyone: good language. You don't usually hear somebody say, "How come you don't cuss?" So, the dirty story that might have been okay in the bar is not okay in the marketplace. You got to be careful of your language. Here's why: too costly. Isolating maybe a big chunk of your language. Now, for a little circle that you belong to, it's okay. The language, the stories, all this stuff is okay. But not in the general marketplace. So you must study your marketplace and say, hey, one thing I must watch, and that's my language in the marketplace. Now, bad language is perfectly acceptable to the people who use bad language. I mean, they got no problem with that. But the people who don't, see. So why not operate on the safe side? Here's the key. Be on the conservative side when it comes to behavior in the marketplace. Of all the places to be conservative, this is it. Why? You become offensive to almost no one. Now, you've even got to watch your language, and it's not a matter of profanity or dirty stories. You've got to watch. Here's a key phrase. Beware of using inside lingo on the outside world. All the computer guys had to learn that, right? They got off in this spacey kind of language stuff, and they found out people that bought their computers didn't know how to run them simply because they couldn't understand the language. Now they had to say, well, we can use this language among ourselves, the computer lingo among ourselves, but we got to shift gears now in the marketplace and make this user-friendly in terms of language that people can understand. So, strange language in the inside circle of business and so on is okay, but you have to sort of shift gears now when you get out into the marketplace. Okay, does that make sense? Inside lingo, outside world. A man said to me one time, we got to get into the Word. I said, how small would you have to be? Not only that, he says, we have to stay in the Word. I said, how long? Into the Word and stay in the Word. I thought, Now, here's what I found out later that he meant. We should spend more time reading the Bible. Now, see, that made sense. We should spend more time reading the Bible because it's a great source of good ideas. Now, see, that made sense. But when he said, we've got to get into the Word, I thought, into the Word. In his group now, that language made sense, right? It made sense in his group. But outside of his group, in what we call like the outside world, see, somebody says, this is kind of strangey kind of language. And it causes people to sort of back away because it's strange. So here's what you must do. Underline, shift gears. You can shift gears, right? A mama talks baby talk to her baby, but now she must not talk baby talk when she's getting her hair fixed, see, they'll take her away. So you learn to what? Shift language from the inside to the outside world. Why? So that you won't sort of isolate or seem a little too strangey, right, to the people in your market. There's no use isolating and alienating your market, right, by just being careless. So these are some of the things on personal development that Shove taught me that were very valuable. One was language. Next was your habits. You know, smoking has been the big issue. And you know, I don't smoke, so it's not an issue for me, except a fine cigar after a unique meal. But now smoking. You walk into an office and you say, you know, where's your ashtray? Where's your ashtrays? No ashtrays probably mean what? They don't smoke here. You say, hey, someone say, hey, I'll smoke wherever I please. I'm saying that's okay. But if you knew what it was costing you just to be careless on that, because I'm not talking about the merits of smoke, not smoke. I'm talking about being careful in the marketplace that you don't wipe out unduly chunks of your market that could serve you well and make you money and make you rich just by being careless with habits. Okay. Here's another one. I had to work on being late. For the people that are always late, you know, what do they care? You know, they're not there when you get there. It doesn't matter, but if you truly want to make progress, not alienate, right, in the marketplace, here's what's acceptable to everybody. Being on time. Right? Not being on time is acceptable probably, you know, to a lot of people, but some, it's going to cost you. Now, if you're careless about your language, and if you're careless about your habits, and if you're careless about being late in some of these things, if you added up in 1 year what that might have cost you in terms of just income, in terms of remuneration, you might not want to pay that much. So the guy wouldn't make $200,000 a year, but he has to settle for $80,000. Why? These three things that he's careless about. That's too expensive. Costs too much. I asked a guy one time what his television cost, and he said $300. I said, no, not to buy it. What does it cost? What? To watch it. You've got to add up what it costs to watch it. And I said, you know, in my personal opinion, this television set is costing you about, this was a long time ago, at least $35,000 a year. To watch it. Owning it's cheap. Watching it is expensive. You've got to add up sometimes what things are costing you. What's this costing me over a prolonged period of time? What does this cost me over a prolonged period of time? If I'm a little careless here, here, and here, and that adds up to $120,000 a year, isn't that too much to pay to be careless? And the answer is probably yes. Now, next is dress, how you appear. Appearance is very important. I had to learn all that stuff. The white socks don't go with the black tuxedo. I didn't know. What do I know? And anything else you can think of, right? Your own deportment, your own public appearance, your own public work, where your fortune and your future is being designed. The key is to be what? Conservative. Pay attention. What could I eliminate that I'm doing that might be offensive or it might be costing me more than I want it to cost? Then here's what's helpful. Get someone close to you and just ask for their advice. Somebody now not to be critical of you, but to be helpful. There's a difference in being just critical and being helpful. That helps you with your dress, that helps you with your manners, that helps you with your mannerisms. I did a little program the other day, 45-minute on a network, and the title of it was Things My Mother Taught Me. Just a few simple things. Mama said, sit up straight, because she had a vision of me in the future of this person who walked straight, chin back, shoulders back. So she wanted to prepare me for that. It wasn't to be mean to me, sit up straight. No, because she had a vision of what I could become if I just followed a few simple disciplined rules. Learn to say yes, sir, no, sir. I love the South because that's part of their cultures. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, sir. I go to Mexico. I love Mexico. They don't just say Jim Rohn. They say Mr. Jim Rohn. Who's coming? Mr. Jim Rohn. Not just Jim Rohn. Mr. Jim Rohn. Don't you like that? That's culture. That's style. That's uniqueness. I like that. Be a student of that. How could you brush up on language and style and dress and portraying yourself in the best light so that it wins you the position, it gets you the place, it gets you an audience, it gets you a lot more people to say yes that before were a little bit offended? Mama said, don't stand too close when you talk to somebody. Leave a little space, because the ones that come up too close, we try to figure out a way, right? Some kind of way, just, that isn't too offensive, because too close is what? Too close is too close. Too close. Mama quoted me ancient scripture, go not often to your neighbor's house, lest he be weary of thee. Don't go too often. This is called sophistication in its early stages. These simple little things you can be taught. Mama taught me, always eat before you go to the banquet so you won't appear hungry. I thought, wow, I didn't know that. That's how you come to the banquet to eat. So, no, Mama says, no. Mama said the banquet is more social than food. There's very little food, mostly social. Talk to the people. How are you? Engage in conversation. Use it as a social exercise, not as a feeding frenzy. So to avoid that temptation, right, to just, gobble it all up, Mama said, eat before you go to the banquet. See, now, on my own, I probably wouldn't have thought of that. And I've been around a lot of people lately that hadn't thought about that. Women have the advantage because we got finishing schools. They still have finishing schools. Men have a challenge because there's no finishing schools for men. And I've met some men lately that weren't finished. Somebody said, it's okay to be a self-made person as long as you don't consider the job done too soon. Okay. So you've got this now? This is good advice for personal development. Because remember, success is something you attract by being an attractive person. Attractive in language, attractive in skills, attractive in social conduct. All of this stuff is so vitally important. Next, a code of conduct. This is not a bad idea to just someday sit down and sort of say, what is my code? How do I want to appear in the marketplace? What do I want to accomplish, and how do I want to accomplish it? What's the principles I'm going to live by and the code I'm going to operate from? Sometimes a company will sit down before they launch the company and say, here's the code. Here's how we're going to do business. Here's what we're going to be known for. We're not going to be tempted into doing this and this and this because that's not the reputation we want to build. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to do it. That's not a bad idea for your personal life. Here's what I want to be known for. I certainly don't want this reputation. And I got to make sure I'm moving from a carelessness that might give me the wrong reputation to move over here to the right reputation. Code of conduct. Dr. J must have had a code of conduct. Julius was one of the most famous basketball players of all time. He was the first $6 million man, not in Reconstruction. The first $6 million man in terms of the coin. Philadelphia paid $3 million to get him and then paid him $3 million in salary. The first $6 million man, Julius. And Julius was such a neat guy besides a spectacular basketball player. He was all the rage for years. Dr. J, he was called for the way he operated on the basketball floor. A writer, sports writer, asked him one time, said, Julius, what's the secret to your success? And here's what he said. And if you've got this code, you got it made for the rest of your life. Here's what Julius said. I demand more of myself than anyone else could possibly dream up. See, that's spectacular. I demand more of myself than anyone else could possibly dream up. Julius is probably saying, I get on my case more than anyone else could possibly do it. I know when I'm doing it right, and I know when I'm letting it go. That's a great code. This is it now, your personal development library. You've just got to be a good student and gather the material and the books as you go along. I started my library. Some of you have heard those earlier seminars and cassettes. When I was 25 years old, I got one of the best. Even on my farm now, I've built a library for 2,000 books on the farm in between, all the rest of the stuff we do. making wine and raising potatoes. It reminds me of Elmer Gibson, my old buddy down in Kentucky. His father was a moonshiner, and I met him before he died. Elmer's old papa. He was something else, and he was a moonshiner. Elmer said he could look at a field of corn and tell you how many gallons per acre. But even on the farm, I got to have a library. Got to be surrounded by the books. You know, the books that made me healthy, and the books that made me wealthy, and the books that changed my life, and the books that refined my philosophy. So got to work on your personal development library. Just start, and then just keep adding to it. Just start and keep adding. I don't have a list. You know, in one of my other seminars, I recommend 3 books. One is the Bible. Second is a book called Think and Grow Rich. Third is The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason. And I might add one more here called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. You just start, and then you just do your own research. Here's where you find a lot of good books, in the used bookstores. I spend a lot of time in the used bookstores, right? Searching for stuff that, you know, is not that easy to find. But building a personal development library. And you need the full range now of your library. Here's number 1, history. Got to be a student of history so we can learn from the past. Here's a good book called Lessons of History by Durant. The Durants wrote, 11, 12 volumes on civilization. Take a speed reading course, you can get through those. And they're very well written. The Durants, they're some of the best writings. This little book, Lessons of History, is a little overview of history. It's only 100 pages, but it is some of the best written 100 pages you'll ever find. You may not even agree with their premise, but you've got to agree that it's incredibly well written. Lessons of History by Durant. Here's a good book called How to Read a Book. How to Read a Book by Adler. Mortimer Adler, chief editor of the New Encyclopedia Britannica. He's written several books. The 6 Great Ideas, Aristotle Made Simple, and some more. But the one good book he's written is called How to Read a Book. How to Read a Book. It's good. It's a tough book to get through. You have to work at it. But what else is new? If you read 3 or 4 pages and say, oh, this is too hard. I mean, how'd you get through school? I mean, you try to tie your shoestrings one time and say, this ain't going to work for me. He said, no, you can't go through life with your shoestrings untied. You got to stay at it, what? Until you can do it. So get through some of this stuff. Some of the good stuff's on page 300. And if you flake out too soon, don't get to page 300, see, then you lack a lot in your personal education. So just laboriously, regularly, laboriously, right? Buy and study and practice and teach good ideas. And keep producing this library. Now, the full range: history, biography, autobiography, stories of unique people, how they turn nothing into something. And if they can do it, you can do it. Books on good health. You got to make the research. You got to do the study. All of us pretty well know, right? Good health consists of, right? The food groups and the servings per day gives you the best chance. And then you need a good nutritional supplementation, good nutritional support system to make up for the errors and the mistakes you make in selecting food and the quality of the food by the time it reaches your mouth. So you need a good program. So a good, healthy piece of your library on good health. My mother extended her life at least 20 years by the study of nutrition. Amazing. My father got his driver's license renewed when he was 92 for 4 years. This was an amazing man. But Mama taught good health. Mama mixed up the stuff, I'm telling you. And me and Papa, she said, if this stuff don't kill us, I think it'll help. We're doing the deal. So your library's got to be the full range. Here's what your library needs to be like: the pantry in your kitchen, well balanced. You can't live on mental candy. Somebody says, well, I just read this positive stuff. Then you'll be too weak to make a fortune in the marketplace. You can't live on mental candy. You've got to have the full range. Yes, you need inspiration, but you've got to have the meat and the potatoes. You've got to have the stuff. You've got to have all the stuff, not just the frilly, positive, feel-good stuff. You've got to have the whole deal, okay? Bread for the head, the full range in your library.